All right, welcome everyone. We are going to be looking at Revit. We're going to be, in these set of videos, going to be going over hints and some instruction for our project that we're working on, which is applying electrical systems inside our Revit house. And so kind of everybody should be jumping up and down asking, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? So it really does a couple things. It gives us additional knowledge and skill inside of kind of the Revit systems, and clearly helps us again with file setup and view control and a lot of the detail work that goes into annotation. And so a lot of that happens back in settings, and we'll be looking at all of that and inserting families and being able to control all those back office items that happen inside of Revit. Of course, in addition, along the way, we'll learn a little bit about wiring and the electrical drafting practices. And I have some PDF files in the background that I'll pass out at some point that kind of describe how multiple switches can control individual lights and some of the terminology that goes into that. And so, of course, I've already posted a general workflow and posted that last week. And so what we're going to do in these videos is go through that general workflow. So we're going to start with file setup. We'll then place components, and a number of you may already be there. And then the next step after that is we're going to put power into the house through settings and put in a circuit panel and begin to utilize that. And finally, only once we have all of that done will we actually put some circuits and create circuits. Once we have that, then we can move on and do our final annotation. All right, so with that short introduction, let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to be working on file setup here. So what I'm showing on the screen is the Revit file that I have. And of course, it already has all the electrical work done on the first floor, and so just kind of try and imagine that isn't there. What I have done here is I have in my view controls and all my file setup I've eliminated everything that puts me to a finished product, and so we're going to go through that here. So in essence, what I'm looking at is a raw ceiling plan and with no view controls on top of it. So it's a bit of a mess. So remember, to get a ceiling plan, it's just up here on the View tab, and I'd come down and click my Plan Views, Reflected Ceiling Plan, and you're going to want to choose one of the levels that show up here as an option, and I would want to have chosen first floor, right? But of course, it's already there. If I uncheck this, I would want to choose first floor. I'm not going to because I already have it. But so you would choose first floor and then click OK, and you'd get your view. So, your next step then is going to be, I would recommend using a scale of 1/4 inch equals a foot and drop that onto a new sheet. Okay, so the reason I'm highlighting again is that we create a basic view and immediately put it on a sheet is because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing 3D modeling and 2D annotation. And the key here is to remember that for the 2D annotation, which is this wiring, the tick marks, any circuit labeling, all of that 2D annotation will only show up in one view. So I want to make sure that I'm working in the view that's on the sheet. That way I don't have to redo any annotation because I happen to have done it on a different view somewhere else. Okay, so if I activate this view, one of the things that I want to do, I'll double click and activate on it, and I'm going to zoom in kind of in on the kitchen here. And if I look underneath my sink, I can clearly see some green stuff. Well, that's plumbing, so I need to turn the plumbing off. I can clearly see I have all these cold air return ceiling registers in the first floor ceiling. Don't want to see any of the HVAC. So I'm going to need to turn that stuff off. And I also, in this drawing, want to have electrical be the main focus. So that anything that's not electrical, in essence, I want to be gray. So that's kind of what we're going to do. So we're going to spend our time doing some visibility graphics. And what I would like to have happen is, as I create the visibility graphics for the first floor, it'll apply to the second floor as well. So I'm going to do that in a way that makes that happen. So I'm going to create a view template, and then I'm going to start to adjust my view options in that view template, and then I can just apply that view template that I've created on a second floor view when I create that. So I'm going to go to view template, and I'm going to say, let's say create template from current view. And I'm going to name this thing, and I'm going to name mine electrical RCP to remind me that I want a reflected ceiling plan. All right, so I've created that, and I have a dialog box now that contains all of the properties of this view. So remember, I won't be able to adjust those anymore over on the standard properties. I'm always going to have to come into a view template to do that. So the first thing I'm going to adjust is my view range. So I'm going to click in here, and I don't know what your view range is going to say, but I want my cut plane to be on the associated level, and I want my cut plane to be at 1 foot. And so that's utilized so that in my reflected ceiling plan I can see these electrical outlets that by code are mounted 18 inches, well, I think it's between 12 and 18 inches above the floor. And then I want the top of my range to be 8 feet up, and that's just a little higher than my ceiling. So you want to look into your file and make sure that you're looking just a little bit higher than the ceiling, whatever your ceiling height is. And then this view depth. This view depth is a little bit tricky in ceiling plans. So in a ceiling plan, the view depth isn't really a bottom. The question is, in this view depth, is how far past the cut plane on the upside do I want to see? So for instance, if I set this number to 9, oops, darn it. If I set this view to 9 feet, that view depth would mean that I'm going to look 1 foot higher than that 8-foot top. So depth, the word depth is really misleading in this view range dialog box for ceiling plans. So the way I simplify things in my mind is I am always going to have my view depth be equal to the top, right? So there's never any confusion on my mind. I'm imagining that there could be some scenario in some design somewhere where these numbers would be different. I've just never come across it, not like I'm an expert in electrical, but I've certainly never come across needing to have those be different numbers. And it simply keeps my mind straight to know that I always have the depth and the top at the same number for reflected ceiling plans. So that's the view range. And I'm going to want to choose a scale of 1/4 inch equals a foot. It's what fits on the page reasonably well. And so at this point, we've kind of taken up a good chunk of time. So I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to come down over to the properties, and I'm going to click this view template command and choose electrical RCP and click OK. And once I do that, of course, now if you used these in the past, know that all of these view options now gray out, and the way I change them is to go in and edit this electrical RCP. So in the next session, we're going to do a lot of customization of our view here so that electrical is what stands out, and everything else falls back into the background. So this will be at the end of our first session, and we'll pick it up in the next session, and we'll see you then.